Romance of the Three Kingdoms, Chapter 120.
Let's unpack this, starting right at the beginning of the end. The chaotic but critical succession.
Okay, so crisis kicks off immediately after the death of the previous ruler, Sun Shu. There's an instant argument at court. Should they follow tradition, install Sun Shu's young prince, or should they go for Sun Hao?
And Sun Hao had the lineage, right? Grandson of Sun Quan, son of a popular former crown prince.
Exactly, he had the pedigree. And the deciding votes, they came from Generals Wan Yu and Zhang Bu. They argued successfully for Sun Hao. Their main claim was pretty simple. The young prince was just unable to govern.
A bit harsh maybe, but politics.
And the Empress Dowager.
Empress Dowager Zhu, well, she felt unable to make such a huge decision, so she basically deferred to the ministers. And, well, they put Sun Hao on the throne. Dipping his lineage might stabilize things.
It did it. Stabilize things.
Not exactly. This is where the whole narrative just pivots instantly from, like, hope to horror. Sun Hao, his style name was Yunzong, starts his reign, but wow, he rapidly becomes infamous.
Extreme cruelty, drinking way too much wine, an obsession with sex. And crucially, he bypassed the established ministers, relying really heavily on this corrupt eunuch, Sen Hun.
Okay, but what's shocking here, and what our sources really stress, is the speed of his tyranny. Like, the ink wasn't even dry on the succession papers, right?
Precisely. Before he even settled in, he turned on the very people who elevated him. Chancellor Pu Yangxing and General Zhang Bu, the two men who vouched for him.
What happened? They just offered advice?
They dared to advise him about his behavior. Just a word of caution. And his response,
oh no,
total elimination. He executed both men and wiped out their entire families. This wasn't some slow purge over years. This was immediate, final, absolute terror right at the top of the state.
Wow. That act happening so early, it must have just frozen the court?
Completely. It did more than just eliminate two guys. It sealed the silence of everyone else.
Yep.
I mean, if the men who put you on the throne can be killed just for offering advice, who else is going to risk speaking up? Right. So this move, right at the start, it just poisoned the whole political atmosphere.
Yeah.
It guaranteed that every single warning that came later would be totally ignored.
And the warnings did come, didn't they? Because the state was already kind of buckling under the strain.
Oh, absolutely. Let's look at the comprehensive critique. This was offered by Chancellor Lu Kai. It detailed the immediate disaster facing Wu, both financially and morally.
Lu Kai's memorial, it's absolutely damning. Because it's so specific. He pointed out that the state was suffering, quote, no disaster, yet the people's resources are exhausted, no actions, yet the nation's treasury is empty.
Think about that. He's describing a government just bleeding itself dry through mismanagement, through extravagance, not through war or famine, just bad leadership.
And you see the real-world consequences of this financial drain and the logistics mess he mentions, the move to Wuchang.
Yeah, the cost of supplying the court and the army there was just so massive. It led to this widespread, really painful public backlash. Lu Kai actually cited a children's rhyme that became famous because it perfectly captured the common person's suffering.
Yes, the rhyme. Prefer to drink Jianye water, not eat Wuchang fish. Prefer to die returning to Jianye, not stop residing in Wuchang.
Exactly. And that's not just a folk song, right? It's an economic protest, plain and simple.
It tells you people were so miserable, so exhausted by the demands of supplying this new capital, they literally preferred to die rather than stay there.
That is the true measure of Sun Hao's tyranny. A kingdom where kids are singing about preferring death to supporting the government's project.
Unbelievable. And Lu Kai backed this up with numbers too, didn't he, about the extravagance?
He did. He pointed out that during Sun Quan's time, the great emperor, the number of palace women was like under 100, under Sun Hao. Into the thousands. And this wasn't just a moral issue, right? Every one of those people needed housing, clothes, food. It just accelerated the very resource exhaustion Lu Kai was warning about.
So the kingdom's bleeding financially, morally. Did anyone try to warn him about the military side of things, the strategic picture?
Yes, absolutely. We have this critical strategic warning from Middle Secretary Hua He. Sun Hao, who seems completely disconnected from reality by this point, wanted to invade the north immediately.
Why? What was the logic?
To avenge the recent conquest of Shu by Jin. He wanted glory, payback.
But Hua, he saw the danger.
Hua, he recognized that the internal fire was already burning out of control. He strongly advised against any external aggression. He said, look, prioritize internal stability. Sima Yan, the Jin emperor, is just waiting for us to stumble. He warned that attacking now was like And this is a fantastic analogy from the source.
One wearing flax goes to put out a fire.
Jin, you're guaranteeing self-immolation. Instead of putting the fire out, you're throwing highly flammable flax onto the existing internal mess. Guarantees a faster, bigger blaze.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hua, he saw that while Wu had a tradition of military offense, trying it now would just expose their already weakened core to Jin. Fatal.
And the consequence for this perfectly sound, necessary advice.
Ha was enraged, absolutely furious. He nearly executed Hua He on the spot.
Seriously.
Seriously. Hua, he just retired immediately. He clearly sensed the end was near. I mean, once the court stops being a place for advice and just becomes a stage for the ruler's paranoia, yeah, the clock is ticking.
And this internal rot, this paranoia, this was the signal Jin was waiting for, wasn't it?
The absolute clear signal. When Sima Yan and his advisor Jia Chong discussed strategy, they explicitly agreed. Yeah. Wait for Wu's internal collapse before launching the final attack. Don't force it.
Which brings us to the counter strategy. The appointment of Yang Hu to Shangyang. This is fascinating.
Yang Hu, the Deuce of Nanchang, he employed what we're calling the virtuous command. It's brilliant. He built strength through non-aggression, through morale, through deep strategic patience, totally counter to the usual smash-and-grab military thinking of the time.
How did he do that specifically?
Well, for starters, he reduced patrols. But he used the manpower he saved to cultivate land. Over 800 king of land.
Okay, remind us, how big is a king?
Roughly 15 acres. So we're talking thousands of acres. He basically turned a military garrison into a massive productive farm.
That's incredible. From what, starting with nothing?
Pretty much. He arrived with almost no supplies, but through this farming initiative, he built up a massive 10-year grain reserve. It's a fundamental shift.
And his whole persona reflected this too, right? The relaxed general.
Yeah, the sources mention he wore a light robe, a loose belt. He was projecting confidence, relaxation. He was showing his troops, and maybe more importantly, the people on the Wu border, that their general wasn't worried. He saw Wu's internal decay, not his own army, as the decisive factor.
Which leads us right into one of the most famous rivalries of the era, Yang Hu for Jin versus Liu Kang for Wu, Liu Kang being the son of the legendary Lu Xun.
Ah, yes. And this wasn't fought with swords initially. It was quiet, psychological warfare. Yang Hu was incredibly disciplined. He refused to let his troops cross the border, even when hunting.
And if they wounded an animal that ran into territory?
He returned it to the Wu soldiers. Every time.
That's not just politeness, is it? It's strategic theater.
Absolutely. He's demonstrating trust, integrity, fairness to the rival soldiers, to the local Wu civilians, and it worked. It impressed Liu Kang immensely.
So much so that Liu Kang responded.
He did. He sent Yang Hu a jar of his own personal wine, a gesture of respect across enemy lines.
Okay, and here's the moment of tension, right? Yang Hu's officers must have freaked out. Poison.
They did, steeped in decades of conflict, suspicion. They urged caution, but Hu just laughed, apparently, uncorked it, and drank it right there. He said, Kang is not one who would poison others.
Wow, the confidence. What message did that send?
Think about the psychological impact on both sides. For his own men, it showed absolute faith in their strategy's moral high ground. For Liu Kang's troops, instant cognitive dissonance. Like, wait, our enemy general trusts our commander more than maybe we trust our own ruler, Sun Hao.
That really breaks down the U.S. versus them mentality. Jin stops being just the faceless, barbaric enemy.
Exactly. And the respect was mutual. Later, when Liu Kang fell seriously ill, Yang Hu sent him medicine across the border.
And again, Liu Kang's officers were suspicious.
Again, they urged caution. Could be slow-acting poison. But Liu Kang took it instantly, his reply. How could Uncle Yang Shuzai poison someone? He used Yang Hu's courtesy name, a sign of deep respect.
This whole exchange, it perfectly illustrates how Yang Hu was winning, doesn't it?
It really does. Liu Kang, who was the final great defender of Wu, he was forced to acknowledge it. He basically recognized that Hu was winning the war through virtue. He even said it explicitly. He conquers us without fighting.
The moral high ground was completely ceded. The loyalty of the border population, even maybe the Wu defense forces themselves, must have been fundamentally eroded.
Utterly. But even Liu Kang, despite his brilliance and this mutual respect, couldn't save the kingdom from its own ruler.
Right, because Sun Hao eventually ordered Liu Kang to attack Jin, didn't he? Despite everything.
Yes. Attack immediately, which Liu Kang knew was suicidal given the internal state of Wu. He'd warned about it repeatedly.
So Liu Kang sent one last plea.
One final, desperate memorial, urging internal reform first, caution, stating flatly that Jin just could not be defeated yet.
And how did the tyrant respond to his greatest general, his last best hope?
Sun Hao believed Liu Kang was colluding with the enemy, with Yang Hu, presumably. He stripped him of command, demoted him to Sima. Just like that.
That's effectively tearing down Wu's final functioning shield, isn't it?
It really is. The destruction was total. And the reign of terror inside Wu just continued unabated.
Yeah.
The sources list this horrifying toll. Over the next 10 years or so, Sun Hao killed over 40 loyal officials.
Including big names.
Oh, yeah. Important figures like Chancellor Wan Yu, one of the guys who initially backed him, General Liu Ping, Grand Minister of Agriculture Liu Xuan. The court was just terrified.
And Sun Hao's paranoia, it got worse?
So extreme that he apparently traveled with an escort of 50,000 cavalry. Think about the logistical drain of that on the already exhausted populace Liu Kai had warned about years earlier.
Just madness. And Yang Hu saw this. Saw the window was wide open.
Wide open. He made his final decisive plea to Sima Yan, attack. Now, his argument was this brilliant piece of comparative strategy. He basically argued Wu's position was now worse than Shu's had been right before Jin conquered them.
How do you figure that? Shu had those mountains, the Jianghe passes. Wu had the river.
Right, but Yang Hu argued Wu's natural defenses, the Jiang and Wai River regions, were actually less formidable now than Jianghe had been. Because the passes of Shu, while tough, channeled the attack. You knew where to focus. But the river defenses of Wu, they required enormous decentralized resources, manpower, and coordination to maintain effectively. Resources Wu simply didn't have anymore, thanks to Hao's misrule and paranoia.
Ah, okay. The strength became a weakness because they couldn't support it.
Precisely. And he hammered the point home. Sun Hao's cruelty, worse than the weak Liu Chan in Shu. Wu's people, more exhausted. Jin's power, greater than ever. It was the perfect storm.
But he knew the timing was critical.
Absolutely critical. He knew this window was fragile. On his sickbed, Yang Hu gave Sima Yan the final, crucial piece of advice. The thing that forced the emperor to act, even overruling cautious ministers like Jia Chong, who still hesitated.
And then that final piece of advice was?
It was basically this. Sun Hao's cruelty means he can be defeated without fighting. Essentially, the state is collapsing on its own. But, and this is the key part, if Hao dies soon and a virtuous ruler is installed in Wu, Wu will not be yours.
Wow. So strike while the tyrant is still alive and ruining everything. Don't wait for him to die and potentially be replaced by someone competent.
Exactly. He understood tyranny was temporary, a self-destructive condition. Jin had to strike now, before the situation changed, before Wu somehow righted itself. That advice was the final catalyst.
And even though Yang Hu himself passed away before the invasion began,
the war had already been won. By his virtue, his patience, his strategy, he laid all the groundwork. Yang Hu's last moments, this is back in November. They tell you so much about ethical leadership. Emperor Sima Yan comes to visit him. He's critically ill, and Yang Hu doesn't ask for anything for himself.
No last-minute honors or anything?
Nope. He just confesses, his regret, his failure, he called it, that he hadn't managed to conquer Wu while he was alive.
But he didn't just leave it there, did he? He had a plan.
Immediately, he turns right from regret to action. He names the one person he believes can finish the job, General Du Yu.
Okay, so he makes a recommendation. Standard enough for a dying commander, maybe?
But what happens next is what's really crucial. After he tells the emperor his choice, Yang Hu demands, really, that the written draft of his recommendation be burned, right then and there.
Wait, he burned the proof. The actual document nominating Du Yu. In that kind of political environment, wouldn't that, undermine his own influence or maybe even make Du Yu's position weaker without that official paper trail?
That's exactly why it's so significant. By burning it, he was signaling absolute integrity. He basically said, look, I'm not trying to gain favors behind closed doors, seek favor in the private gate, after making a public appointment for the good of the state.
Ah, I see. So it was about making Du Yu look like the state's choice, not just Yang Hu's protege.
Precisely. He wanted Du Yu to be seen as essential, chosen on merit, totally free from any political debts or factional ties to him. It was purely about the mission's success, not his own legacy.
That level of selflessness is pretty striking, and the sources say his death had a huge impact.
Oh, immense. People in the southern regions apparently shut down their markets just to mourn him. Even the border soldiers, hardened troops, were reportedly weeping. And it led to this monument, the tear-shedding still on Xian Mountain. The story goes that anyone reading the inscription about his life just couldn't help but cry. So yeah, he set the stage, ethically speaking. He got the right successor, Du Yu, in place without any baggage.
Okay, so Jin has this strong moral foundation, the right guy in charge, thanks to Yang Hu. But what about Wu? Who were they actually facing?
That's the contrast. While Jin is sorting itself out with leaders like Yang Hu, Wu is, it's rotting from the inside, basically, under its ruler, Sun Hao.
And they had lost key defenders recently, too, right?
Yeah, crucial figures like Ding Feng and Liu Kang had died. This kind of left Sun Hao unchecked, and he was. Tyrannical is putting it mildly.
The stories about his court sound horrific. Constant forced drinking parties.
Yeah, he'd force ministers into these endless drunken banquets. And mistakes, even tiny ones, weren't just punished. They were punished in ways designed to terrify everyone.
The sources mention things like stripping faces, gouging out eyes.
Chillingly specific, isn't it? That's the kind of thing we're talking about. Plus, he had these 10 eunuchs, the Huangmen Lang, acting as his personal spies within the court. So nobody trusted anybody. Just pervasive, crippling fear across the state.
When a ruler's using that kind of pure terror, it signals weakness, yeah, but like you said, it also creates an opening, maybe an urgent one.
Exactly. And this internal rot in Wu sets the stage for a big debate back in the Jin court. Invade now while Sun Hao is weak and hated, or wait.
And there were strong voices on both sides.
Definitely. Pushing for immediate action was Wang Jun, the governor of Yuzhou. He was adamant. Go now.
What was his reasoning?
He had 3 main points. First, Sun Hao's reign of terror, as bad as it was, might not last. What if he gets replaced by someone competent, someone less hated? The opportunity could vanish.
Makes sense. What else?
Second, logistics. Wang Jun had spent 7 years building this massive fleet of warships. And, wooden ships don't last forever. They were literally starting to rot. His invasion tools were aging.
Okay, practical concern.
And third, a very personal one. He was 70 years old. He basically told the emperor, look, I'm running out of time myself. The window for the ships, for the political situation in Wu, for him, was closing fast.
Pretty compelling case for urgency, but someone argued against it.
Yes, another minister, Wang Hun. He urged caution. His point was that Wu's army, despite Sun Hao, might still have high morale right now. He suggested waiting a year, let them get worn down, let Jin consolidate more.
And the emperor?
The emperor actually bought Wang Hun's argument. He agreed to delay the invasion. And the story goes, he just sort of retreated to the palace to play Go with his secretary, Zhang Hua. The whole massive invasion plan just stalled.
Wow. So the momentum just died.
It seemed like it. But this is where Du Yu, Yang Hu's chosen successor, steps back into the picture. And you have to understand Du Yu a little. He wasn't just a general. He was famously scholarly. They called him a Zhuozhuan obsessive.
Okay, the Zhuozhuan, that's an ancient historical text, a commentary on annals, right? Why does being obsessed with that make a difference here?
Because the Zhuozhuan isn't just history. It's about patterns. Patterns of power, political decay, human behavior, how states rise and fall. Du Yu wasn't just reading stories. He was analyzing millennia of strategic cause and effect.
So his historical study gave him foresight.
Exactly. He saw the danger in delaying. He sends this urgent counterargument to the emperor. He says, look, our preparations, our troop movements, they're already known. Everyone knows we're planning something.
Right. The element of surprise was maybe already gone?
Gone. And Du Yu predicted Sun Hao's reaction perfectly. If Jin pauses now, Sun Hao won't relax. He'll panic. He'll think Jin is regrouping for an even bigger attack.
So what would he do?
Du Yu laid it out. Sun Hao would immediately move his capital further south, probably to Wuchang. He'd strip the current border regions bare, forcing all the people inland, and heavily fortify every possible river crossing and stronghold in the south.
Meaning if Jin waited a year.
They'd arrive to find nothing. Wild land with nothing to seize, was Du Yu's phrase. Scorched earth, basically, and a much tougher defensive line. He told the emperor, the risk now is just failure. Annoying, but recoverable. The risk of waiting is facing an impossible situation next year. He put the odds of success now at 10-9, almost certain.
That's a powerful argument. How did the emperor react?
It completely flipped the script. Zhang Hua, the guy playing Go with the emperor, reportedly just shoved the Go board aside and said, Du Yu was right. Jin is strong, Wu is internally weak, we can do this, and do it quickly.
So the invasion was back on.
Instantly. The order was reversed. Invade immediately.
And the scale of this thing was enormous.
Oh, yeah. Du Yu himself, as commander-in-chief, takes 100,000 troops out of Jiangling. You've got 4 other generals, including the cautious Wang Hun, each with around 50,000.
That's a massive land force already.
But the real hammer was the Navy. Wang Jun, the old general who wanted to go, immediately he's leading this huge fleet down the Yangtze. We're talking possibly over 200,000 men in total across all forces, thousands of ships. A colossal force bearing down on Wu.
How did Wu try to stop that fleet? They must have had river defenses.
They did, and they were pretty ingenious, actually. Credit, ironically, goes to Sun Hao's favorite eunuch, Sen Hun. He came up with a two-pronged strategy to block the Yangtze.
Okay, what were they?
First, massive iron chains. Hundreds of them, stretched across key points in the river. Some were hundreds of feet long, and the individual links apparently weighed 20 or 30 pounds each, designed to just stop the ship's cold, tangle them up.
Heavy duty. And the second part?
Underwater traps. Tens of thousands of huge iron spikes, maybe 10 feet long, hammered into the riverbed in shallows and channels. Basically, naval mines designed to rip open the hulls of the Jin ships.
That sounds really difficult to get past. Chains and spikes. How did Jin deal with that?
Well, the spikes were hard to clear, but the chains were the main barrier. Wang Jun, leading the fleet, came up with a brilliant counter. They didn't try to send guys out in boats to hack at these massive chains.
So what did they do?
They built enormous rafts. Huge things, hundreds of feet long. They loaded them up with reeds, hay, drenched them in oil, and then they mounted giant sharpened iron spikes or axes on the front.
Like floating battering rams made of fire.
Exactly. They'd set these massive rafts on fire and just send them floating downriver with the current. The intense heat from the burning oil and hay would weaken the iron chains, make them brittle, and then the sheer weight and force of the raft hitting them, or the giant spikes, would just snap them.
That's incredible. So they burned their way through the main river defense.
Pretty much. Once those chains started breaking, the river highway was essentially open for the main fleet to push downstream and link up with Du Yu's land forces.
Okay, river's open. Now we get to Du Yu's tactics on land, particularly around the key city of Jingling. You mentioned deception.
Yeah, this is pure Du Yu, the strategist. He knew Sun Hao's generals were probably relying on those river defenses and their fortified cities, so he decided to play on their fears. He took just 800 elite sailors, led by Zhu Zi.
Only 800. What could they do?
Their mission wasn't direct combat initially. Under the cover of night, they secretly rowed across the Yangtze in small boats, bypassing the main defenses. They landed and seized a key strategic spot called Lexiang, which was behind the main Wu lines near Jiangling.
Okay, they're behind enemy lines. Then what?
Then they started making a huge amount of noise and visual confusion. They planted dozens and dozens of Jin banners all over the hills, lit massive bonfires, and just kept banging drums constantly.
Creating the illusion of a much larger force that had somehow gotten across the river.
Precisely. It looked like a whole army had suddenly appeared where it shouldn't be.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, on the main front near Jiangling, Du Yu deliberately made his land army feign a retreat.
To lure the Wu army out.
Exactly. The Wu commander, Sun Chen, took the bait and charged out after Du Yu's retreating forces. But just as he engaged, Zhu Zi's 800 men, positioned perfectly from Lexiang, launched their real attack, setting fires inside the actual city walls of Jiangling.
Oh, that would cause panic.
Complete panic.
Mm-hmm.
Sun Chen, seeing his own city on fire behind him, apparently lost it. The sources quote him yelling something like, "The northern armies must have flown across the river." He was completely bewildered and terrified.
And the result?
Sun Chen was killed in the chaos almost immediately. Then the naval commander, Lu Jing, fell. Another key Wu general, Wu Yan, was captured, and Du Yu had him executed on the spot. No hesitation.
So Jiangling just collapsed.
Utterly. And the psychological impact was devastating. Once Jiangling, this major stronghold, fell so quickly and unexpectedly, resistance in the whole region just crumbled.
You mean other cities gave up?
They didn't even fight. Reports say regions from Yuan and Jiang, all the way south to Guangzhou, just surrendered. Their governors and commanders simply sent their official seals in to Du Yu's advancing army and bowed. Jin, they saw the wind and sent their seals.
Wow. The momentum must have been incredible.
Staggering. But, that kind of speed can also make commanders nervous. After Jin took another key city, Wu Chang, one of the generals, Hu Fen, maybe remembering Wang Hun's earlier caution, argued for a pause.
Pause. Why? They were winning so decisively.
His argument was practical, maybe overly cautious. He pointed out the river waters were rising, making campaigning harder. And he warned about pushing too hard, too fast against an old enemy like Wu, suggesting they wait until spring to finish the job.
Okay, so caution raises its head again, but Du Yu wasn't having it, was he? This is where the bamboo analogy comes in.
This is the moment. Du Yu completely shuts down the argument for delay. He doesn't just disagree. He gives them this incredibly powerful metaphor. He says the Jin army's momentum is now like shattering bamboo. You know how when you split bamboo, once you break through the first couple of tough nodes, the rest of the stalk just splits open easily along the grain?
Yeah, it just goes zip.
Exactly. He said that's where they were. The tough early resistance was broken. Now the rest of Wu would fall like blades meeting the bamboo without any further place to apply effort. To stop now, he argued, would be like trying to stop a law of nature. It would be strategically foolish to halt that irresistible force.
That's a brilliant way to put it. Very visual.
And decisive. He didn't just win the argument. He immediately ordered all the Jin armies, Wang Jun's fleet, his own forces, everyone to converge and make the final push directly on the Wu capital, Jianye. No waiting for spring. Finish it now.
And that sealed it. The swift total unification.
That analogy, delivered by the scholar General Du Yu, rooted in his understanding of natural forces and momentum, was arguably the final intellectual push needed to keep the campaign laser-focused and incredibly fast.
But that kind of swift victory, it always has a human side, often a tragic one. We should probably pivot now to what was happening inside Wu, the collapse. The last stand was led by Chancellor Zhang Ti, General Shen Ying, and another general, Zhu Xiliang, though not the famous Zhu Xiliang, obviously.
Right, a different one. And things inside Wu were desperate. There was debate, chaos. Shen Ying apparently wanted to pull back further south, maybe try to regroup, fight on. But the real focus in the sources is on Chancellor Zhang Ti. His reaction was different.
He seems like a figure of intense loyalty, almost to a fault in this situation.
Absolutely. He refused any talk of surrender or retreat. The text says he was weeping, arguing that if the emperor and all the ministers just gave up, if, quote, not a single person dies for the nation, would that not be a disgrace? His exact words were, Bu yi waryu. He felt it was a matter of fundamental honor. Someone had to make a final sacrifice.
And did he?
He did. He fought bravely in the final battles around the capital, but was killed in the chaos. Shen Yin was also killed by a Jin officer named Zhu Ji. Interestingly, Zhang Ti's loyalty was recognized even by the Jin later. They wrote poems praising his loyal death.
So respect for the enemy's resolve, even in defeat.
Yes, for someone like Zhang Ti. But the situation in the Wu capital itself, it descended into something much uglier.
Right. You mentioned chaos. The sources describe something pretty shocking happening internally, don't they?
They do. It really shows the complete breakdown of order. As defeat seemed certain, the Wu officials needed a scapegoat. And they decided the powerful eunuch Kent Hun was to blame for everything. For the corruption, the military failures, everything.
So they arrested him, or tried to sideline him?
No, not exactly. It was far more brutal. A group of officials, basically a mob, stormed the palace. They seized Ken Hun, and the text is explicit. It says they. Sui Gain Hun, Shangdan Ki Ro. They shattered and cut Sin Hun and ate his flesh raw.
What? They ate him raw?
That's what the source claims. It's incredibly shocking. A primal act of vengeance happening right there in the palace. Instead of mounting a final defense against Jin, they're literally tearing apart one of their own political figures.
That's horrific. It speaks volumes about the state's internal collapse, doesn't it, if officials are doing that?
Exactly. It shows that Wu wasn't just defeated militarily, it had disintegrated from within. The discipline, the order, it was just gone.
Okay, so while Wu is falling apart internally in the most gruesome way, let's shift back to the Jin side. Because even with Wu collapsing, the Jin campaign nearly hit a major snag, right? Back in their own court. Wang Jun sends his victory reports back to Luoyang, expecting cheers, but gets a debate.
A huge debate. And a really critical one. It could have changed everything. You have Minister Jia Chong arguing forcefully to, well, pump the brakes. He was worried. He brought up the troops being exhausted, the southern climate being unfamiliar and causing sickness, the classic Bu Fu Sheng. His advice was basically, recall the main army, consolidate what we've taken, and maybe finish the job later, more carefully.
But they were so close. Why would Jia Chong advise stopping? What was his angle? Fear of overreaching?
Probably. Jia Chong was known for being cautious, maybe overly so. He'd seen the instability that brought down the Wei dynasty they replaced. He likely feared some unforeseen disaster, a plague, a sudden Wu counterattack, anything that could destabilize the new Jin dynasty. Better safe than sorry, perhaps.
But someone must have disagreed. Strongly.
Oh, yes. Minister Zhang Hua, he argued the complete opposite. Speed. Relentlessness. He said Wu was demoralized, their capital was wide open. Pausing now would be a mistake, giving them a chance to recover somehow.
Yeah.
Xianghua was confident. He predicted they could capture the Wu emperor somehow in less than a month.
So a classic hawk versus dove situation at the highest level. What did the Emperor Sima Yan think?
Sima Yan, or Jin Lord Yan as he's sometimes called, he was leaning towards Jia Cheng's caution initially. He hesitated. But then, talk about timing. Just as they're debating, an urgent message arrives. It's from General Du Yu, another commander on the front lines. And his memo strongly backed Zheng Hua's call for immediate advance. Don't stop now. That seems to have tipped the balance. Sima Yan gave the order. Full speed ahead.
Wow. History turning on the timely arrival of a memo if that had been delayed.
Exactly. Wang Jun might have been halted. Wu might have had breathing room. The war could have dragged on. Who knows?
So with the green light, Wang Jun just unleashes everything.
Totally. He pushed his fleet forward relentlessly. Didn't stop even for high winds, apparently.
He was aiming for Stone City, right? Shitucheng, the key defense point for the capital.
That was the target. And when he got there, the Wu commander, Zhang Zhang, didn't even fight. He just surrendered, opened the gates.
And with Stone City gone, that was basically it for Sun Hao, the Wu emperor.
Game over.
Yeah.
His options were gone. The sources say he thought about suicide, briefly. But his advisors, Hu Chang and Xu Ying, talked him out of it. They suggested he follow the example of Liu Shan, the last emperor of Shu Han.
Liu Shan, who surrendered peacefully to Wei years earlier and got treated reasonably well. The Unlagong.
Precisely, the Duke of Peace and Joy. They advised Sun Hao to take that path. Surrender with dignity, hope for clemency.
And he did. How did the surrender actually happen?
He followed the ritual. He arrived at Wang Jun's camp, Yuchen Zifu.
Meaning bound, with a coffin, showing he was prepared for execution.
Exactly, the ultimate symbol of submission. But Wang Jun played his part perfectly, too. He immediately ordered Sun Hao unbound, and he had the coffin burned publicly. Then treated Sun Hao with king's rights, showing respect despite the defeat.
A very deliberate political statement there. Jin wants unity and not just conquest and slaughter.
Absolutely. It signaled the war was over and reintegration was the goal, and the scale of that reintegration was massive. The sources give us the numbers. Wu wasn't small. It was 4 provinces, 43 commanderies, 313 counties.
Wow. And the population?
Huge numbers. 523,000 registered households. That translates to roughly 2.3 million people. Plus, they absorbed Wu's remaining army, 230,000 soldiers, and its navy, 5,000 ships. And maybe most importantly for stability, 2.8 million hu of grain. A hu is a significant measure. This is a vast amount of resources.
So Jin didn't just win a war, they absorbed a whole nation-state, resources and all. What happened when Sun Hao finally got to the Jin capital, Luoyang, and met Emperor Sima Yan? Was it awkward?
There was definitely some tension, yeah. There's a famous exchange recorded. Sima Yan apparently made a sort of joke, saying something like, "I've had this seat waiting for you for a long time."
Ouch! How did Sun Hao respond?
He gave back as good as he got. He supposedly retorted, "I had a seat waiting for your majesty in the south as well." Sharp, even in defeat.
Huh. Still had some fight in him, verbally at least. Was there more confrontation?
There was one more significant one, this time with Minister Jia Chong. Remember him, the cautious one. Jia Chong, maybe trying to assert himself, confronted Sun Hao about his notorious cruelty in Wu, specifically asking about punishments like gouging out people's eyes or skinning their faces. Horrible stuff.
Yeah, Sun Hao had a dark reputation. How did he answer that charge?
His answer was brilliant, in a way. He didn't deny it. He said, yes, such punishments existed, but they were reserved for very specific crimes. Regicide, killing one's ruler, and, quote, the utterly disloyal.
Ah, and that was a pointed remark.
Extremely pointed. Aimed squarely at Jia Chong himself. See Jia Chong's family history, particularly his father Jia Ku's role in the events leading to the end of the Wei Dynasty. Well, it wasn't spotless in terms of loyalty to the Cao family, so Sun Hao was basically saying, those punishments, they're for people like you. A final, cutting remark from the defeated emperor.
Wow. Lost the war, but maybe won the final argument in court. So what was Sun Hao's ultimate fate?
He was formally enfiefed, given the title Marquis of Returning to Mandate, Guming Hao.
Returning to mandate, implying the mandate of heaven had passed to Jin, and he was accepting it.
Exactly. General Wang Zhong got huge rewards, naturally. And interestingly, even the descendants of Zhang Ti, the loyal Wu chancellor who died fighting, were rewarded by Jin. Though it's interesting who Emperor Sima Yan gave the ultimate credit to. He didn't just praise Wang Jun or the generals currently in the field. He specifically mentioned the late General Yang Hu.
Yang Hu, he died before the final conquest, didn't he?
He did. But Sima Yan pointed to Yang Hu's long-term planning, his patient strategy and preparation years earlier, as the real foundation for the victory. It highlights that this wasn't just a sudden blitz, but the result of careful, long-term strategic thinking by Jin. And with that, the Three Kingdoms period, almost 100 years of division and war, was officially over.
A momentous end. Unified China under the Jin.